At a bit of a loose end one weekend, I decided to take a quick trip to Jersey and places thereabouts. It turned out to be an inspired choice. Now, the first thing you will see when you get off the boat is this cheesy bit of tourist kitsch. I mean, what sort of tourist numpty would go for something like this? Yeah, alright. Look, it was a lot of fun and the ride was considerably enlivened by the informative commentary you get along the way. And if you don't speak French, I'll be happy to translate.
Sur la mer, appelée Normal Point, est venu le SS Vega. Puis le 11 mai 1945, un navire baptisé HMS Beagle est venu et il a été chargé avec des soldats et marins britanniques de la Libération. Amarrés à Saint-Hélier, ils ont défilé à travers de la place de la Libération. Ils ont noté les drapeaux allemands et ont soulevé encore une fois le drapeau britannique. Jersey a été libéré. Juste en face de nous est une très belle vue sur Saint-Aubin. À la fin du XVIIe siècle, il y avait beaucoup de bâtiments de bateaux de la voile et de la pêche. C'était un port très actif, mais il n'a jamais été la capitale de Jersey. Saint-Hélier a toujours été la capitale. Même 4 fois plus des personnes ont vécu à Saint-Aubin en séjour. Ils ont fait une grosse erreur et ils se sont rendus compte. Construit sur une colline, il n'a jamais été assez grand. Donc, début du XVIIe siècle, un grand nombre de personnes firent leur bagage et ont pris leur métier et ont traversé les dunes, des sables et les plages. Ils ont fait construire Saint-Hélier tel que nous la connaissons aujourd'hui. Situé dans la baie, nous avons la fort de Saint-Aubin, construit à l'origine pour protéger Saint-Aubin contre l'attaque. Maintenant, vous pouvez voir qu'il refuge les petits bateaux contre les temps. Les écoles et clubs des jeunes peuvent passer les nuits et jours là-bas et profiter des équipements de sport nautique disponibles. Il s'agit d'un des bars et restaurants nombreux à Saint-Aubin. Ils servent tous les bières de Jersey et les plats du jour. Dans tout ce domaine, en voyageant, la construction a été achevée sur la demande de la mer. Mais la récupération n'est rien de nouveau.
On Jersey, of course, things don't always happen at a breakneck pace like that. Especially if, like I did, you take your morning constitutional on a damp Sunday morning. And it goes without saying that you will be reminded every now and then just why this island was named Jersey in the first place. Now, one thing I did not expect to see on Jersey is a public defibrillator. I was tempted to try to get the lid off to see if it was coin operated, but I thought better of it. So there you go, folks. If you flatline in Jersey, you're going to be okay, as long as you're in sight of the Liberation bus stop and there is somewhere nearby who knows how to use a defibrillator. It hasn't always been fun and games. Let's not forget that Jersey is a mere 22 kilometres from the coast of France, or, as it was known in 1940, Germany. On June the 30th, 1940, Jersey and the neighbouring Channel Islands became the only British territory to be occupied by the Germans during World War II. And this is a museum that tells a story of that occupation. Originally intended as an underground hospital, what the Germans knew as Hogengangsenlager 8 was only partially completed. It was dug out at terrible cost by slave labourers from Russia and Ukraine, and they died like flies. Alongside them, local workers were pressed into service. They were paid, not very well, but they were given a considerable incentive to work, extra rations of food, which was becoming increasingly scarce on the island. Now it's a museum about an occupation that nobody can understand. Nobody knows why the Germans bothered establishing such a huge garrison on Jersey. The island had been partially evacuated before they showed up, and during the occupation they banned or very heavily restricted the Boy Scouts, Freemasonry, the Sally Army, cameras, radios, hard liquor, fishing and cycling side by side. Now it's very easy to be flippant about that, but it must be remembered that several hundred islanders were deported to the mainland and dozens died in concentration camps and other prisons. And it was all for nothing. On May the 8th, 1945, the German garrison on Jersey surrendered and the island was liberated without a shot being fired. Now you may wonder why the British didn't simply invade and retake the island, and the answer is simple. Winston Churchill himself decided that the Channel Islands were of no strategic or military value, and the War Cabinet agreed. The Germans didn't. Now this used to be a gun emplacement that held a very commanding position over St. Brelade's Bay, along with this machine gun nest. Mind you, these are just Tonka toys compared to what you'll find further up the west coast of the island. This is one of the gun emplacements of Battery Moltke, and this brightly coloured monster was thrown off the cliff into the sea in a rather unsporting gesture by the British after they'd got the bailiffs in and had the Germans evicted. It was recovered and restored, unlike this rather tatty exhibit which is clearly past its use-by date. Rather more modest are these two installations, but I'll have more to say about them later. And this is the big boy on the block. This is Marine Pilestand 3 at Les Landes on Cedouans Bay, on the extreme northwest tip of the island. The Germans certainly knew what they were doing when they built this beast. It has resisted half a dozen attempts to demolish it, including one that took a lot of explosives, and it's still there. The wily islanders didn't try and knock this one down though. This is located on the cliff top at Corbière. The tower was repossessed and turned into a lookout tower for the local Coast Guard, and it's now what must be the world's most secure bed and breakfast. Of course, there's nothing new about keeping Johnny Foreigner out of this corner of the green and pleasant land. These are Conway's Towers. This one, rather unimaginatively named First Tower, is just down the road from St. Alban. You'll find these towers all over the Jersey coast. This one, for instance, is just round the corner on St. Brelard's Bay. There were 23 Conway's Towers scattered about the place, or about 15 left, and they're all designed to allow the locals to warmly greet the invading French by shooting them and then preserving their bodies in boiling oil. In fact, the French did invade in January 1781, by which time 4 Conway's Towers had been built, armed and garrisoned. Not one of them played any part in the battle and the subsequent defeat of the French. All of this lot can trace its lineage back to this place, the grand old dame of military fortifications on Jersey. This is Elizabeth Castle. Construction started in 1594 on a tidal island in St. Albans Bay, just off the coast near St. Helier. And you can walk out there at low tide, but at high tide you swim. And as military fortifications go, Elizabeth Castle has been a bit busier than most. In 1651, during the Civil War, ours, not the one in America, Parliamentarian forces bombarded the castle and blew up the medieval Abbey Church, which was a curious target for puritanical Christian troops. During the 7 Years' War, French POWs were banged up here. Now, that would have been preferable to being horribly slaughtered on a medieval battlefield, but given the conditions they were kept under, not much better. When the French invaded in 1781, the castle was besieged yet again, but I think they were probably getting used to it by then. Things really kicked off in 1940 when the Germans took out a 5-year lease on Jersey and they heavily fortified the castle, thinking that that would be the place where the British would invade. The huge concrete emplacements are still in place, and we saw them earlier. They extensively dug out tunnels around and underneath the castle, expecting the RAF to start bombing. They never did. The castle itself was a very important German strongpoint during World War II. Unlike the huge concrete emplacements up and down the coast, they might as well not bothered. Elizabeth Castle was taken, along with the rest of the island, in May 1945, without a shot being fired. So let's say you want to go and visit this little piece of military history, but you don't want to get your feet wet. Nothing to it. This is a puddle duck. It's an amphibious ferry that takes you to and from Elizabeth Castle. This one is captained by an amiable Scotsman who bears an uncanny resemblance to James Cameron, who directed that bloody awful film Titanic. Fortunately, the puddle duck doesn't face the same challenges as the Titanic, and this film isn't 17 bloody hours long either. And I have to say, it isn't the smoothest or quietest ride you've ever had in your life. But who on earth would want to walk ankle deep in wet sand when you can travel in style like this?
and the rear should be to the right. Now, secure those bayonets or you will all get points. Done? Yes, Sergeant! Well, Jones, go on center. Private Jones will now demonstrate putting on the life jacket. Place over your head. Pass the cord around your body. And secure by lining up the two ends and sliding together. What do we do? Line up and slide together, Sergeant. The cord is adjusted by pulling on the loose end. There is also a whistle for attracting attention. Infant life jackets are released by the crew. If you're unsure, you must refer to the life jacket safety card by the side of your seat. Do you understand? Yes, Sergeant. Excellent. God save the king! God save the king!
So there you go, folks. If you go to Jersey and you don't have a shot in a puddle duck, then you haven't been to Jersey.